Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. For more than 25 years, this TV series has explored a wide variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. Wars and violent conflict occur in many places around the world. Also, torture occurs more often and in more places than ordinary people might assume. Experiencing any of these can traumatize a person, so a great many persons around the world have been traumatized by torture, war, or violent conflicts. What do traumatized people need in order to recover? How can we support practitioners who are providing treatment for this trauma? During this hour, we'll discuss these concerns with two guests who have worked extensively in this field. I'm happy to welcome Ayman Nijim and John Van Eenwyk. It's good to have both of these two fellows here. They are highly expert in the field. John Van Eenwyk is an Episcopal priest who founded the International Trauma Treatment Program, ITTP, which is based in Olympia, Washington State in the USA. He's a Ph.D. clinical psychologist, and he has served as ITTP's clinical director. It's good to have John. Ayman is a mental health practitioner from Gaza, Palestine, where he focuses especially on helping children who've been traumatized by the extreme and persistent violence that Palestinians have been suffering for many years. He's visiting the United States for the first time and recently completed 3 months of further training with ITTP in Olympia. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We will learn a lot of stuff. Well, you folks know a lot of stuff. The viewers will learn a lot of stuff during this hour. Let's start with John. You've been working in many parts of the world on these kinds of concerns. How widespread is the trauma caused by wars and other violent conflicts?
It's pretty widespread, and it's very long-lasting. So traumas that are existing from wars that are maybe 100 years ago are still very much alive in many populations as the groups look to each other for the blame of who's to cause the trauma. So I'd say it's easier to name the countries where it might not exist, and that's a difficult thing to do as well.
And I know you have a concern and a background of experience with folks who've been tortured as well.
Yes.
That's an area, how widespread is that?
Torture was actually beginning to kind of diminish in the world until our last presidential administration. The Bush administration exercised what was called extraordinary rendition, where we would capture people and take them to other countries to have them tortured there, which kind of revived the torture industry. So it's on the rise.
So the idea was then the United States could say, well, we aren't torturing.
Exactly.
But it was...
We don't even know where they are.
Yeah, but right. We hauled them there and...
Absolutely. Contract work.
Yeah, contracting it out.
Yeah.
Is what they're doing. I do some work related to criminal justice issues as well, and people often refer to what happens in prisons in the United States as including elements of torture. And
that's especially the case with the privatization of the prison industry, where they're not subject to the same rules and regulations that the government prisons are.
Yeah. Either one of you, how do people change after they've experienced, whether it's war or violent conflict or torture? What happens to your personality?
Yeah, when you experience the war, everything mentally will change. Like for the children of Gaza, every child has experienced 3 traumatic experiences in his life. So if you lose your father, if you lose your mom, if you lose 27 of your family members, you will have a trauma, you will have a complex trauma on the child. And when there is a demolition, when you witness that the strikes, when you see the air fighters, when you see the drones, when you see the tanks, it is for the children and for all the people. It is a trauma.
And what does that? How does that change them? How are they different as a result?
It depends, because in trauma it is like we have to differentiate between there are severe cases and there are moderate cases and there are low cases. So there are different techniques for healing. It is not like the same one, so you have to differentiate between. But in Gaza, we are experiencing ongoing trauma because the attacks are daily, and each 2 years or 1 year there are a war. And what we heal the children, there will be a war that will dismantle all of our work. So we are facing a tough job in regarding to trauma or healing in Gaza.
Yeah, and we'll talk some more about Gaza in a few minutes, because there's a lot that people don't know, especially if they rely on the mainstream news media, which do not report very accurately. John, can you tell us anything else about how people are affected by these kinds of traumas?
Well, people are affected both collectively and individually in war traumas. And one of the more disturbing things that we find is that just as any individual who's traumatized will do anything to avoid it in the future, they become hypervigilant, we call it. They really want to make sure, once bitten, twice shy, that it doesn't happen again. And in regard to war, that means keeping the people who traumatize them down. And so they will appeal to the most pathological people in their group, the most brutal people, to keep the other group down, which traumatizes that group. So then they do the same thing with the most brutal people in their group to keep the first group down. And you got a cycle going over and over again where they keep re-traumatizing each other. And it's very difficult to break that cycle.
When we were preparing for this program, I mean, you told me that you lived all your life in war, and that you want to live in peace, and you want your 2 children to live in peace. From your own personal and family experience, is there anything else you can say about this, just at that personal level, the family year? I mean, how old are your kids?
One is 3 years old, and one is 1 year old. Like, I have one boy and one girl.
So, I mean, and they're living in Gaza?
Yeah.
So they're affected by...
Yeah, all of the children in Gaza are affected. We are the nation of kids. We have 53% of the population of Gaza are children.
53%?
Yeah. And every child in Palestine has exposed to 3 traumatic experiences, not more, more than that. So I was born in 1983. And the beginning of the first Intifada, it was in 1987, and in 2000, it was the beginning of the second Intifada. And then I went to Iraq and witnessed the life there. It was the war in 2003, and came back and witnessed 2 operations, Operation Cast Lead, and you can see we are here when the Operation Pillars of Cloud, as the so-called Pillars of Cloud on the Palestinian.
Yeah, they give cute names for things, but it's really pretty deadly and nasty stuff. And you mentioned the Intifadas, which are, translation is kind of like uprising. But those are largely nonviolent, and the news media here don't.
The meaning of uprising, if you go to dictionaries or any dictionary, it means that...
It's a shaking off.
Yeah, it is like fighting against the occupier. It is like fighting, it has good connotation. It is not like rebellion or like insurgency or like intifada. It means uprising, uprising against the unjust man, like that. So we have our own meaning of that intifada, that it has positive meaning for us. It is against the...
If you're being oppressed, human dignity requires that you stand up and shake off that oppression. Both of you work very hard and very skillfully to help people recover from trauma and violence. What do people need in order to recover? What are some basic elements or first steps from either of you?
Well, one of the things that trauma does is it isolates people, because they become afraid. And they become afraid of what's going on in the environment. They become solitary often. So one of the first things that we do with people who've been traumatized is to try to get them together and to be able to work together, to play together. This is something that Ayman does a great deal of in Gaza, but to try to overcome that isolation. But often the most important thing in working with trauma is to help people to understand in the first place that they are traumatized. So many people don't believe that. They don't realize they've been traumatized, and they don't realize that trauma influences how they perceive, how they behave, what they think about other people. So just getting them to understand that A, they are traumatized, and B, this is the result of it, helps tremendously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially in Gaza or about in general about the trauma, as Dr. John said, that some people they don't believe that they are traumatized when they are when they know that they are traumatized. It can there are many therapies that it could help them. In Gaza, we don't use like we use recreational performances, recreational shows for the children inside in the schools. We try to go to the schools to help the children via different actions, different performance, like different expressive arts. We use a lot expressive arts in Gaza Strip. So to let the children focus, to let the children to freely draw on what they think, and to build their skills also in creative writing, in play, in performing the Arab dance, folk, dabka, that we will try to make the children more integrated in the community and to love their culture more and more. Like it is part of our work. We couldn't make therapy sometimes for the children in the schools because we are not a private. It is not for private. We are a non-profit organization. We go to the schools to help the children heal and play in the center. Yeah.
Let's share a little bit of information with the viewers. We'll show a map on the screen of where what Gaza is. There's in the Olympia area. There's been a lot of organizing around Middle Eastern concerns in Israel and Palestine, and especially Gaza, where Rachel Corey was. And you have a map that can show, just so people can see, it's in the southeastern corner of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah. Gaza Strip is a small, it is like 136 square kilometer, and 7 kilos wide. And you can see we have like 2 main crossings for the passengers. We have from Rafah, you can look, this is Egypt, and we can go, here is Rafah crossing, and we have our own trauma in regard to the Rafah crossing, because we couldn't go outside of Gaza easily, so it takes time sometimes to arrange for your travel. It is not easy, you could go and enter. And we have like, this is the Mediterranean Sea, and if you could look at the Gaza Strip, it is so small if you compare it with all of the Palestine, or if you want to compare it with the West Bank of River Jordan. West Bank, it means West Bank of the River Jordan. So it will be so different for you. And look at Israel. Israel take 82% of the Palestinian historical land. So we are just stuck in these small.
So out of all that historical land that was Palestine, there's very little left for Palestinians to live on. Okay, because people in this country still just don't understand that. And so it's good to get that information out. You work especially to help the children of Gaza, as you've said. And you said that 82% of the kids in Gaza have suffered trauma. Is there anything else to add at this point?
I think I was reading yesterday about that after the last operation in Gaza, pillars of cloud, as they said.
The Israeli military action that was occurring at the end of 2012.
Yes. Absolutely. And there was now 92% of the traumatized children who witnessed the war and who experienced the trauma or have like post-traumatic stress disorders. Like we are now experiencing more traumatic cases. We need more help. We need like so we are like it is increasing dramatically, and
Yeah. So you have essentially almost the entire population with PTSD,
yes,
and that's got to be a profound shift in the culture.
yes,
So, you studied for your bachelor's degree in Iraq from 2001 to 2005, and Iraq is another place that had been suffering already from the previous Gulf War, from the older Bush, and then again with the Bush that we had more recently, who started the war there in 2003. What can you tell us about Iraq and the suffering of children there?
Yeah, I will give you a story which could explain my idea, my thoughts about that. When the war was waged against Iraq in 2003, I was a student, and so I get homeless when I have no house. Because my Iraqi family said some Iraqi people are very afraid that they will talk that I am fighter. I am students, so they will think they were afraid of the American and Iraqi forces that because I am Palestinian and Saddam was a pro-Palestinians, so I was stuck in these options. So I slept 2 days under the bridge, and I was thinking about imagine that yourself, the children are homeless in all of the world. They haven't chosen their religion, their culture, but they are victims of us, victims of all of the international community. I was thinking about that. I am a student. I have no political affiliation. I am just a student, and I witnessed that. So I was thinking in myself in how to help a man like that in this situation, a child like that.
Yeah.
So I have dedicated my life to work on this issue. So I have like a mission, a noble mission to achieve something which is regarded to child protection.
Yeah.
How we could internationally build a child protection policy for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be something.
Hopefully,
wouldn't that be something for nations to get
if we care for the children, because we just care for the money and politics, and it is nonsense if we will compare it with the children life to be happiness. If we could contribute the happiness for the children, it is the true meaning of life, because we build a true generation in the future, a generation that focus on peace. We should indoctrinate the children on love, compassion, and peace. By our minds. So we have to understand before our children could understand. Yeah.
Wow, that's a powerful start for that effort. Yeah. How can children recover from these traumas? You mentioned a few minutes back about you go into the schools, you help them with the arts or the traditional folk dances or other expressive arts or creative writing. What else do the young people, either of you, what else do young people kids need to recover from trauma?
Kids need to learn how to play. One of the things that trauma does is it makes them afraid to play, because the surroundings are very dangerous. So, for example, in many parts of the world where there's a war, there are minefields all over the place. So it's not like two children go out and play frisbee or something like that, or ball. They'll be blown up. So children kind of shrink back into themselves, and they look to the adults to take care of them, but the adults can't do that.
Well, the adults have often been traumatized as well.
Or dead.
Or,
So one of the most important things, and this is what Ayman does particularly well, is to get them playing together. So that, again, it overcomes that isolation, but it also liberates their spirit in a way that they can then transcend what's happened to them and begin to move in a more positive direction with a little hope for the future.
John, your experiences and activities range across quite a number of countries.
Yeah.
I've known you for probably as long as you've lived in
probably 20
Olympia.
years, right? A long time.
About 20 years or so, and I know you're always in Sri Lanka or Gaza or, you've been to so many different places, and you're helping people in a lot of different places who've been suffering from war, torture, other kinds of violence. What kinds of trauma treatment services are people in these various countries doing? How are they doing it?
Well, one of the interesting things is that when you go into a country with the intent of teaching people how to treat trauma, one of the first things you find is they already know. but it's not a discrete academic study. It's not like a professional technique. It's embedded in the culture. So people in every culture of the world have been dealing with trauma for thousands of years. And they know how to do it. They know how to touch each other. They know how to hold each other. They know how to let each other cry. They know how to talk about it. They know how to reinforce certain behaviors that work well to help the person heal. They have traditional healers. They have their religion. They have their arts. They have many, many resources at their disposal. So one of the things that is very humbling is that when we from the West go into a country to teach people how to treat trauma, we discover very quickly that they often, usually, at least particularly with regard to that culture, they know more than we do. So then it becomes a process of mutual learning. Okay. It becomes a collaboration. It becomes colleagues working together, trying to figure out how to deal with the more intractable problems that confront them and confront us, and it becomes a real friendship, a real collegiality.
So it becomes more egalitarian.
Absolutely.
And not this top-down.
Yes.
Right.
I'm going to show you people how to do things the Western way.
Ideally, it does. But of course, if you want to get funding to do this work, you have to do a top-down thing, because people who fund you want to know what are you selling these people? Yeah. What are you doing for these poor ignorant people who don't know what they're doing? Right. So there are a lot of groups that go in and they teach all of these initial type things, EMDR, CBT, DBT, CPT, you name it. And the people there just wish they'd leave.
Yeah, I think every culture has its uniqueness and has its own therapies. But all of the therapies in the world, like all for the trauma, for the healing of the trauma, it can fit, but we have to adapt it to the culture. Like here in the Western psychology or here in Olympia, there are a lot of therapies, offices, therapists, and we take a lot from that, but we have to adapt it with our own culture. So every culture has uniqueness, and just to add that.
Yeah. And I know that kind of flexibility and respect is part of the International Trauma Treatment Program, the work that you've been doing for these years. And I've always been impressed. You started the group in 1998?
98.
And I've always been impressed with how you and the International Trauma Treatment Program have been interacting so directly at the grassroots with real people.
Right.
And so respectfully with mental health practitioners and others, right. In very humane, grassrootsy ways in these countries. Tell us some more about that on the ground approach that you do. You've given some already, but
well, we decided early that we were not going to be working with people who were part of the government, part of the major universities, or part of the big charitable organizations like Doctors Without Borders or Save the Children or stuff like that, because they all had an idea that they were imposing on people. And we wanted to identify people who were already on the ground in their communities doing what they could do from good hearts, major intelligence, a lot of determination, and work with them because, frankly, they're more like us. They're more like us. We're not part of the major universities. We're not part of the government. We're not part of aid organizations.
Yeah,
so
you're grassroots and you're funded by people in Olympia.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
And some other places, but
right. It's grassroots finding other grassroots.
Quite heavily based here.
And they're the most fun people to work with.
You had a good insight. You told me a story on the phone about the tsunami that had done so much damage to Sri Lanka, which is the island nation off the coast of India. And you arrived in Sri Lanka about 2 weeks after that tsunami had hit a few years ago. And you have a story about rural people and urban people who were put in the same refugee camp.
Right.
If you could tell us that story, I think that had a good sense to it.
One of the backgrounds to that story that's very interesting is, of course, the island was flooded with practitioners from Europe, United States, and Japan, all teaching trauma treatment techniques. And in some of the refugee camps, they weren't having any success at all because, of course, these techniques didn't translate at all into Sri Lankan culture. They were coming out of the West. And there was one refugee camp in the south where there were a whole bunch of Sinhalese people who didn't know what to do in a refugee camp.
And there are two, the viewer should know that in Sri Lanka there are two major ethnic groups, the
Right.
Sinhalese and the Tamils.
And the Tamils.
In different parts of the country.
Different parts of the country. And the Tamils are in the war zone.
Yeah.
So they've been living in refugee
in
camps.
the north.
Right. So they come down to the south and help the people who are the Sinhalese to deal with the refugee camps,
Yeah.
how to deal with them, what you should do, how do you get what you need. But then there was one refugee camp that had both people from urban areas and people from rural areas. And the people from rural areas were used to a very quiet pastoral lifestyle, and the urban people were usually quite energetic and liked to play their music loud, and there was a lot of anger between these two groups. And a Sri Lankan man said, but the one thing they have in common is we all know each other's songs, and we all know each other's dances, and we have Sri Lankan songs and Sri Lankan dances. So they got people together to sing the songs together and do the dances together, and overcame a lot of that dichotomy between the two groups.
Yeah.
All the while, there are all these groups from the West and Japan coming in trying to, show them how to do it, and it wasn't working.
Yeah, it's
a great story.
A great story, and partly because you had the two conflicted groups, the Tamils and the Sinhalese, who where instead of the war zone in the north, where the Tamils largely were. They were able to come down and help the Sinhalese instead of being enemies. It was like just this.
It really changed a lot of people's minds.
Story.
Yeah.
Some of the people that you work with in other countries would benefit from some intensive custom tailored work, like what you've been doing for 3 months in Olympia, where each time you bring somebody here, you meet folks there. Who are doing really great stuff and would benefit from some intensive work. You come here and then you custom tailor a program to provide just what they need.
Right. Actually,
tell us how that works.
They custom tailor the program for exactly what they need. They come here and the idea is for all of us to just kind of brainstorm together. We show them what we do and we indicate how what we do comes directly out of our culture. So they can then identify what in their culture could be developed to a more highly effective trauma treatment kind of technique. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing about bringing people here is these are people who have no opportunity otherwise for training.
Right.
They have no options for learning more about what they're doing.
But they're already doing good stuff.
But they're already doing great stuff.
Yeah, so they've established credibility. You know that these are highly competent,
absolutely
high quality people to interact with. You and other folks that we've had come through town.
So we bring them here. We have a great time with them for 3 months, and at the end we give them a diploma with a seal on it. And they take that back, and now they're experts. Now people start listening to them, and now people give them more power. So the whole point of ITTP is we are not a training program, we're an empowering program. We empower them, and they empower us, and all of us learn what we're going to do. We'll learn how to do better.
And it has such authenticity is what's cool.
That's because it's so much fun. Authenticity and fun are really related.
It has some humility built into it and some egalitarianism, and I think that's what's what I find special is that egality. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I found interesting in this program that it is a 3 months brainstorming session. Like it takes for 3 months, and you share with a different professional psychologist and professional therapist how they deal the trauma. And how we deal the trauma. So it is like brainstorming. It can give it can enrich our information. These kinds of brainstorming sessions.
Yeah, but it's not just like this random stuff. I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
it's geared toward practicality of being more effective, even more effective when you get back home.
Yeah, it is a kind of experiential learning. That from your experience, you are talking from your experience. You are not talking as you read an article you want to show that you understand it or not. It is about experience and how you feel, how you witness, and how you feel, and how you describe for the people about the trauma. I mean, like that.
And you draw upon all kinds of specialties and disciplines, art therapists and
body therapists,
medical
people, psychologists.
It's such a rich array of professional skills.
Well, Olympia has that.
Yeah.
Olympia is a wonderful place to do this program. I'm not sure where else we could really do it.
But you pull those out, and then you do just what's needed. I mean, you collaborate. It's just exciting. what would you like to tell us about your experiences here in these last 3 months?
Yeah.
I mean, beyond what you said.
I first of all, I have to say I love Olympia. And
Well, so do we.
Yeah, Olympia community, the people are very compassionate and are very passionate. And what I learned here, I learned a lot. I learned how the culture it is, how the people are, their style of thinking, and learned about my training also. I learned a great deal of therapies, a great deal of information about how to heal trauma, about how to progress in the future in my profession, in my helping profession in the future. So it is like a kind of cultural, social change for me, and I could help my colleagues in Gaza on how in Olympia they think about healing the trauma, so we could like adapt what we heard here, what we learned here, and so for the best of our community, so we could help the highly percentage of traumatized children in Gaza. So we need like updated techniques of training like ITTP, International Trauma Treatment Program, that make like a significant change in the future for the lives of the children in Palestine. Yeah.
Okay.
Ayman was here during the election. So I think one of the really valuable things he learned was how to prevaricate. You know prevaricate?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very useful.
Yeah. Well, tell us some more, John, about when you started it. How did the idea occur to you leading up to the 1998 founding? You had some background, and
yes,
there's some groundwork leading up to 1998 when you created this.
Back in '87 in Chicago, we started the Marjorie Kovler Center for the Treatment of Survivors of Torture. And people began to ask us to come to the countries where it was being done rather than just waiting for the fortunate few to make it to Chicago. So I started going to Gaza and places like that. And then when I moved out here, I continued to go to various countries, but we kept getting interrupted by the war. So I would start a workshop, and people would begin to kind of share how they felt about what had happened to them, and boom, the war would start. We'd be under mortar fire, would be bombed or something, and we couldn't continue the workshops. And I was talking with Peter Gerard, definitely want to mention his name.
Yes.
We all know Peter.
One of our good friends in Olympia.
Very good friend.
Solid.
And having lunch at Traditions, and we fomented the idea. He proposed, why don't we bring people here? And I thought, that's impossible. But Peter, everything's possible with Peter.
Yeah.
So we did it. We started bringing people here, and then we started going over there and then bringing people here.
We
and
worked closely. He was a key part of the Bosnian student project back in the mid-90s.
Absolutely, yep.
And we had endangered kids from Bosnia that we could bring here and help them get through school. And
yes. And then we just put the call out for practitioners, and the top people in Olympia immediately called and said, we want to be part of this. Yeah. We absolutely want to join up, and we'll donate our time and our resources, and it's worked very well since then.
How did it evolve in the early years? I mean, it by now you've had, Ayman is one of how many? About 18 people?
He's number 18.
Something like that,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, how did the early years, how did things get rolling, and how did it evolve?
Well, in the early years, I was the only one who went overseas. And then some of the other faculty began to get interested in that too, and they started going as well. And then I also recruited a woman here in town to go over with me to help with the workshops. So, we'd add a piece here and we'd add a piece there, and we'd see what was necessary and see what the resources were and try to integrate the whole thing. And so it got the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the accomplishments during this time from 1998 till now, besides having 18 top quality experts like Ayman?
Well,
and I met some of the previous ones.
We've put together an international faculty. We have Ayman, and we have Damla, who we also had this year, and all the people we've had before are now part of the International Trauma Treatment Program faculty. And we keep in touch with each other, we share ideas, and then we still go into other countries, and one of the things we're able to do there then is to kind of reassure people that you do know what you're doing, and you can act as a person who knows what you're doing. You don't have to feel embarrassed that you don't really know what you're doing, because you do. And so we create these friendships with people all over the world and get them in touch with each other. So it's an international network now.
Yeah. And you told me that sometimes just informal conversations if you're in some other country,
That's the best.
just informal conversations can be even
Yep.
more useful than a formal proceeding.
Right. We do formal proceedings because people expect it. But then we try to break off around 4 o'clock, and then we just kind of get together with people and sit around and talk and laugh and share ideas. And I think that's where we really get going on what we're doing. We do that a lot in Gaza. We've done that for years in Gaza.
Yeah. So you folks had met there before.
I had not, no.
Oh, you had
Joanne
not?
Osmond, who is one of our art therapist practitioners, met Ayman when she went over to Gaza this year and identified him as someone who would be good to the program.
Okay.
Right.
But I'm guessing that maybe most of the people that we've brought are people that you had met
Yes.
out in their own home countries.
We're trying to move beyond that now and get other people going out and doing it so that we get a broader range of people.
Yeah. I want to put in a plug for your website so that people can go visit
Thank you.
www.ITTP.org, the International Trauma Treatment Program. And it's a website that has information about what you're doing and your history of the group and the
Pictures.
practitioners and the faculty and photographs. I mean, there's a lot of
Videos.
stuff.
Yeah, the
Drop
whole
down
9
menus,
yards.
You can, you can spend some time there and learn a lot about it. It's
Right.
very impressive.
And early in the program, we really couldn't do that. We couldn't really have a website. We couldn't really advertise ourselves because so many of the people we brought over here, if their governments knew that they were here studying trauma treatment, when they went back, they would be disappeared. They would be just taken out because the governments didn't want anybody to think that was happening. So fortunately now, the international situation has changed a bit and we're able to advertise more and let people know what we do.
Well, and you've had a number of countries. I mean, you've had folks from Gaza. You've had people from several parts of Africa.
Right. Asia.
Sri Lanka.
Yep. Mostly Asia, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East.
Middle East, yeah.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. And as a nonprofit group that does not get government funding
Yeah.
or other big strings attached kind of stuff, it's largely out of our own pockets.
Yeah, it's pretty much private donations from private individuals in Olympia. We're pretty much totally funded by people from Olympia.
Yeah, and that's amazing for something that does such good
It
work
is.
worldwide.
Right,
Or
right.
almost worldwide, not so much
Yeah.
in Latin America, but other many parts of the world.
It's quite a credit to the Olympia community,
Yeah,
really, that they
yeah,
support this so
yeah,
well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you do a fundraising thing in early December of each
Yes.
year or almost every year.
Just about every year.
and I'm sure it needs more than that annual thing to keep it going.
Yes, we do. We need to focus more on fundraising.
So that would be a worthwhile thing. So you bring folks here like maybe once a year,
Once a year.
approximately.
Yeah, 3 months. A 3-month program once a year, and we try to bring 2 people, and we try to bring them from different countries, and we try to bring a male and a female, because the 2 people become quite close. They dialogue with each other, and they hear about the issues that they're facing in their own countries, and they learn from each other as well as learning from us.
So you try to get from 2 different countries.
Yes.
So but this
try
time
to.
you're the only person here.
No, we also had a woman from Turkey.
Oh, I hadn't met her.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there things that you can think of that you're most excited about doing back home after you get back to work there?
Yeah, I will take with me the compassion of Olympia and the Olympian people. I will take with me awareness of how to heal the trauma in my country, or how to help in healing the trauma. I will take with me knowledge and cultural understanding and compassion of the people, like here in Olympia. I will take everything from here. Yeah.
You're also looking at possibly getting some additional academic work someplace else in the U.S. later. Is that? Did I understand that
Yeah,
right?
I am trying to apply for a School of International Training in Vermont, in New York. There is a program which is called CONTACT program, which is meaning conflict transformation across cultures. Because, as you know, I like to build to focus on this part of issue about conflict transformation and about trauma. Trauma is like it is a symptom or it is a kind of, it is a result of the trauma. It is a result of the war. So I would like to focus on conflict transformation across culture and stuff like that.
That's an interesting concept to think of conflict transformation.
Yeah,
you
not
know.
management.
Not management. It's not like let's just manage this conflict. Let's transform it.
Yeah, I focus on the children and conflict transformation because we could progress in the future if we focus on our inner peace. When we are focused that we are human, we could make a change.
Yeah.
If we are just taking everything as a granted, it is a problem for us.
Yeah. You also mentioned when we were talking on the phone to prepare for the program, you mentioned your interest in reconciling. I mean, so you mentioned that a couple times on the phone.
Yeah, I hope for my country to be unified. I hope for my country to live in peace. We don't need everyday strikes against our children, against the people in Gaza. We don't need more occupation. We need to live as all of the people around the world live.
Yeah.
We need to live as all of the people that just we are human beings and we have our own rights, human rights.
Yeah, there's kind of like a mental disconnect between you hear what the politicians say and you read what the mainstream news media say, and then you meet a real person from Palestine, especially from Gaza, which is especially beaten down by the occupation by the government of Israel and the Israeli military. And it's like, this is not what the newspapers tell us. This is not what the politicians tell us.
Yeah. I think it is a good question for me because the media person should do a good job in the future.
Yeah.
If they wanted to talk about Palestine, they have to visit Palestine and talk about it.
And they have to talk with real Palestinians.
To talk with real Palestinians, they have to be, because they have to be not impartial, not biased. They have to be neutral because they will give us love, and sometimes when they are talking about lies or about something, deformation of the meaning, it will make more people hate each other. So we will focus, because newspaper, there are many people who are reading newspapers. They just focus on what they are talking about. Just know that there is God and who could punish them if they are talking badly about Palestine. They should talk neutrally, not to be biased for just because of your something like that. I think they should be neutral because they will sleep well.
Yeah. Well, we try to do something different on this program.
And they will have a lot of information when they are not biased.
So, anything you want to add on this angle about using either what we're talking about here about the reconciling or the transformation of conflict, or the realities?
This is very important to do, because all traumatized populations become alienated from each other, and they split up into factions for protection. And protection not only from the other side, but sometimes from people among themselves, because anyone who says, let's talk to the other side, let's see if we can make some sort of an arrangement with the other side, are viewed by many people as traitors, as a threat. So reconciliation within the culture is as important as reconciliation between the cultures. And this is something that's very important to do. And Naima Al-Tarabin, who was a woman from Gaza we brought over in 2003, has been working to bring Hamas and Fatah together and to get them talking, because only when a culture becomes fairly unified does it have any power to do anything about what's going on with regard to it.
Well, if you're an oppressor and you want to keep the people down, keep them oppressed, what you do is you divide and conquer. You get them to fight against each other.
Absolutely.
And that's a classic technique of an oppressor, is you get the people on the bottom to fight each other.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
And one of the ways they do that, for example, is the only real medical care for very complex diseases like some of the cancers is in Israel. So if a Palestinian father has a child who needs treatment in Israel, the condition is that he becomes an informer in Gaza. And that's a death sentence for him if he's ever found out. But the only way he can get his child's life saved is to inform on his own people. And that's how it's done. It's pretty nasty.
So there's a lot of work. A
lot of work.
A lot of work, and the program you're looking at of conflict transformation. It just seems like open things up a fresh way.
Yeah, as you know that we need as Palestinians to educate them ourselves more and more. The Palestinians in Gaza, Gaza, there are many people who are educated. I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters. All of them are educated. Even and most of the families, most of our friends are educated. So it is like you have to be educated because it is good for you.
Yeah, and it's difficult.
If you have no job, I spent like 4 years in my life in Iraq and witnessed the war. And when you go to Gaza, when you go to another country, you have no job. Oh, that's a problem sometimes because there are many unemployment rates in Gaza. So as you know, we are under occupation. No way Gaza is. We are under occupation by air, by sea, by crossings, by everything. We have just 4 hours of electricity per day. So when Dr. John was emailing me about that, I hope I have to wait just 6 hours when the electricity came, so I could reply back for him. So it is like everything is.
We don't think of that stuff here, and we're not so much aware of that.
Yeah. In Iraq also, before the war, it was like there was no electricity. And because we are students, as you know, we have not a lot of money. We are students, so we couldn't buy a generator for ourselves. So we spent 3 years there without electricity and went back to Gaza, and there's no electricity. So it is like we have experience without electricity, so we could read the candle.
Let's in the few minutes that remain, I want to see if we can share some stories. There's a story that I wanted you to tell to make sure that we could squeeze in this thing about Chester, who was here
2 years ago.
How many years?
2 years ago. Chester was here.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell, and he was from
Chester's from Liberia,
which is in the western part of Africa.
The western part of Africa. They've had a lot of trauma there, and no trauma treatment program at all. And so when Chester came here and became aware of what he could do back there, he realized there was no funding for it, that he would have to either get money from the government, which would tell him what to do, or a large charitable organization, which would tell him what to do, and that he would not be able to develop an indigenously based trauma treatment program. So his host family decided to get together with some friends, and they bankrolled a chicken farm for him in Liberia. And they went to a tribal elder and got some land, and they bought 3,000 chickens and brought the chickens in because eggs are very expensive in Liberia. They come from India. And so now he's funding his trauma treatment program through the chicken farm. This makes it tough for our fundraising because people will say, well, how do you treat trauma in the world? Well, we put a chicken farm in Liberia, and they don't quite get the concept.
But it's more powerful than just the chicken farm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He now has a source of income for an indigenously based trauma treatment program that's totally autonomous.
And then there's something about the, was it the feed for the chicken or what?
Well, of course, one problem leads to another. So then they discovered that there wasn't a chicken feed in Liberia. It was all coming from the Ivory Coast. And it's from Ghana. It's all very expensive. So now they're developing an indigenous chicken feed industry in Liberia. So the trauma treatment program is actually improving the economy of Liberia.
Well, and the health, the nutrition.
And the health and nutrition of the people.
It's a buy local program. A few months ago, we did buy local as a theme for our program. The value of having a local economy instead of dealing with big corporations. You have local businesses where the money stays in the community. And that's a great example of that.
Think of the eggs and the oil it takes to bring eggs from India to Liberia. And that's all saved. You don't have to use that. It's fabulous.
Better for the climate.
So the ITTP is now in the chicken business.
Yeah, good. That's cool. Are there some other success stories or other stories that was just one of my favorite stories because I heard about that a while back.
Yes.
And I wanted to make sure you had a chance to tell it on the show. Are there other stories of creative, unexpected things that folks have done?
Sure. For example, in Trinidad and Tobago, they have the highest murder rate in the Caribbean, and it's higher than any city in the United States. And so there's an enormous amount of trauma there and no trauma treatment. And so we got together with a group of people from the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychology, and the people in that program started a trauma treatment program. And we came in and kind of showed them how we set up ITTP, and they set it up on the same model. And the thing that was innovative about that was that all of the major psychologists in Trinidad didn't want to have any part of this because they were treating the more wealthy people in Trinidad, so they didn't want to get their kind of hands dirty in this kind of work. So the people who were motivated to do this put together the trauma treatment program, and now the government has decided to fund 4 centers for trauma treatment around Trinidad. And it's all based on Trinidadian culture and Trinidadian ways of doing things. It's a totally indigenous trauma treatment program. We're very proud of that one too.
That's cool.
Oh, it's fabulous.
One of the things that you mentioned to me on the phone, I don't remember if we've touched on this in the show, but how you can talk with folks across different, you have a long background talking with folks across different entities. You did mention like trying to get Hamas and Fatah to talk with each other in Palestine, but you mentioned to me on the telephone when we were preparing about how there's some elements that our government thinks of as terrorists, and so you're not allowed to talk to them. That's bad to talk to them. And you have a reputation of being able to talk with anybody.
Well, we always talk with all sides when we go there, and mainly because they're blended into the culture. It's not like those people who are defined as terrorists are separate off living in an enclave somewhere. They're all interwoven with the culture. So you go visit a family in the evening and you find out that the man is a Tamil Tiger, or he's Hamas, or he's Islamic Jihad. And because you're there visiting and he's entertaining you and he's giving you food, you become friends with them and you talk about various things and you talk about how best to work for the liberation of the country that they're in. And we used to be able to do that quite successfully before the Bush era because they had a lot of respect for us because the United States did not do to our citizens what their government was doing to theirs or the other government was doing to theirs. We didn't torture. Since the Bush administration, they don't care to really talk to us that much anymore because we're as bad as the ones that are doing it to them.
Yeah, so it's sort of clamped down on the space.
Yeah.
Are there other things? We have just a bit left. I want to just make sure that we have, if there's anything else that we haven't touched on that you're hoping to be able to say.
No, thanks. That's good. I agree with what Dr. John said that about that we should define the meaning of democracy. We should define the meaning of terrorism. I don't believe that anyone who is protecting his people, his children, his women, is terrorist. We should to broadly define the abstract words like democracy, like freedom, and also sometimes religion.
Yeah.
Because we use these for our gains. Sometimes we use democracy for our gains. We use religion for our gains. All of the human beings, not just one place, they misuse sometimes the meaning of the life.
We in this country, we look back to George Washington and those people at the very beginning of this country, and if you were in Britain, you would have thought of them as insurgents, terrorists, whatever. The Boston Tea Party, people go out there and do this rambunctious activity, and yet from our perspective, we say, oh, these are great heroes of the founding of our nation. But from Britain's perspective, they would have been terrorists or whatever, So we have to be way more generous in trying to understand what somebody's intentions are. We want to be judged based on our good intentions.
Yeah.
But then when somebody else has good intentions, we say, no, I don't like your intentions. Your bad behavior overrules it. But it's a double standard. Let's understand our common humanity and starting point.
I believe that don't be prejudgmental. You have to listen actively to what the man said. And if you don't understand, go browsing, go surfing the internet, go asking some people. Don't be judgmental for just I'm like a bandwagon, as it is in American. Idioms. Don't be a bandwagon. You have to understand, you have to be aware, you have to read more and more, and then you can judge. If you think you understand. I think it is important that not to be pre-judgmental about.
And read stuff written by somebody from the other side.
You read from different sides. Don't read from this as he is a prophet. He is not a prophet. We are, all of us are human beings, and to err is a humane, and to forgive is divine. So you have to read more and more, and go asking. Don't stuck in your ideas, because everyone has his own ideas, but he should build his mind to be humanistically. Because I believe if there any idea against love, against compassion, against peace, against that, it is not a good idea. So it is a bad idea. We have to neglect it and go for love and compassion.
Well, I appreciate the chance to talk with both of you.
Thank you, Glenn.
We've been friends a long time. I'm happy to meet you and connect. I appreciate your work and your sense of compassion and your support for the kids and wanting your kids and all the other kids to grow up in peace.
Thank you.
I want to thank also the folks who've been watching this program. Some of the world's harsh realities can feel overwhelming, and I'm grateful to Ayman Nijim and John Van Eenwyk and the other people who are working hard to deal constructively with the world's problems. I appreciate the work of the International Trauma Treatment Program, which is based in Olympia in the state of Washington in the USA. It does amazingly high-quality work here and in other parts of the world, and I encourage people to visit www.ittp.org and to support their work financially and in other ways as volunteers. You can get information about a wide variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolence by contacting the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation at 360-491-9093 and www.olympiafor.org. We are all one human family. We all share one planet. We can create a better world, but we all have to work at it. And the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks.